Craigslist is the 26th most visited website in the United States, and globally often breaks the top 100, yet it still looks like this. Other platforms add more and more monetization and try to maximize engagement in every corner of the website, but not Craigslist.
They tell me that I turned down about 11 billion.
This is how one accidental founder turned a side project into a billion-dollar company without ever chasing growth, and how that stubborn simplicity almost got destroyed from the inside. This is the story of the one startup that never sold out. It all begins with someone who isn't your typical tech founder, Craig Newmark. Craig through and through is a nerd, and I don't mean that as an insult. In high school, he sang in the school choir, was in the physics club, and co-captained the debate team. He said, "I did the plastic pocket protector thing, wore thick black glasses taped together. I was possibly nerd patient zero." He carries that same demeanor even today, quiet, introspective, and very humble, but this came with a lack of social skills. Other entrepreneurs and founders often make a prototype, drop out of Stanford, get billions in funding, and scale fast. But Craig was different. He described himself as an accidental entrepreneur, and how this happened is very wholesome. After working at IBM as a programmer for 17 full years, he found himself in San Francisco working at the financial firm Charles Schwab, and it was here that the magic happened.
I was part of a community, and I figured I should give back to the community. So I started, I would post events I heard about, which usually involved the technology, maybe arts. That worked out really well for me. People started asking me to add them to the little mailing list I had. And it wasn't a listserv then. It was just a CC list in the Pine email tool.
The company didn't even start as a website. It was just an emailing list. Craig's emailing list. Emails of local events, jobs, apartments, with users requesting more and more categories. Soon, in '96, it grew from just a CC list to dedicated pages to a website. And now that it was no longer just an email list, Craig had to decide on a name, and the way he did it was very in character.
And I was thinking, it's still mostly events. We'll call it SF Events. I'm a nerd, I'm very literal. People around me told me, hey, we already call it Craigslist. Craig, you've invented a brand. And Craig, here's what a brand is.
Craigslist was born. Soon enough, Craigslist was much more than just events. It was everything. Other founders look at long-term scale and spend hundreds of millions to grow as quickly as possible and as big as possible. But Craig had a different approach.
When we go to Sunday school in whatever form, no matter what your religion is, people are generally taught to treat people like you want to be treated. You know, you don't have to be all about money. And sometimes you should be your brother's keeper or your sister's keeper.
The most fascinating part is the way Craigslist found its monetization. Originally, Craig ran everything in his free time, but soon it was too big for him alone. He took on some volunteers to keep the gears turning, but Craig quickly found out that this didn't work.
It involves Craigslist and a job offer scam that's flooding email inboxes.
Job listings were being spammed with repeated listings and scams, and the then 12-person team could barely keep up. They released a poll asking users if they should charge a fee for job listings to solve spam. Users voted in favor, and fees were added. $75 in San Francisco and $25 everywhere else. Craigslist changed from a volunteer group to a private company, though Craig vowed to never take on outside investment. Despite this, offer after offer came in, millions and millions in funding, promises of scaling, but Craig turned it all down.
And they tell me that I turned down about 11 billion. That doesn't bother me because my moral compass was set in Sunday school.
Craig also said that VCs and bankers would talk to me and tell me I could make a huge amount of money doing the usual Silicon Valley thing. But I was a nerd and I realized I wouldn't know what to do with $1 billion. He was doing everything he could to avoid Enshittification, a strange but fitting term coined by Cory Doctorow. Even if you don't know the word, you've definitely seen it in action. He explains how platforms die. First, they are good to their users. Then they abuse their users to make things better for their business customers. Finally, they abuse those business customers to claw back all the value for themselves. Then they die. I call this Enshittification. Despite avoiding this, Craigslist was growing fast while sticking to their moral code. Yet, their biggest challenges were still ahead. One company made its way into the board in a very strange way. In a world where every platform is trying to milk you dry, Craigslist stayed true, and so did Proton. That's why I use Proton Pass, today's sponsor. Proton Pass is a secure end-to-end encrypted password manager built by the same privacy-focused team behind Proton Mail and Proton VPN. No ads, no trackers, no data selling, just real security built in Switzerland backed by their community. For the longest time, I was doing what most people do, reusing weak passwords with minor changes, and yeah, I knew better, but fixing it just felt like a chore. Proton Pass fixed that in 5 minutes. Now I've got one strong master password and Proton handles the rest. Strong logins, autofill, credit cards synced across devices, even 2FA codes built right in. No more app jumping. One of the smartest features? Hide my email. Instead of using your real email everywhere, Proton Pass lets you generate throwaway aliases. So if a site gets hacked or starts spamming you, you just burn the alias and move on. No mess, no risk. Start browsing securely from anywhere. Use the link in my description to check out Proton Pass for a safer, faster, and more open internet. Big thanks to Proton for supporting the channel and building tools that actually respect users. One of Craig's most important decisions came in 2000 when he found someone to help him keep the faith of the company and take the helm, Jim Buckmaster.
People helped me understand that as a manager, I suck. But I had already hired a guy, Jim Buckmaster, better at it than me. He kept the faith, minimal monetization. He added a whole bunch of new cities, added new categories, kept the spirit. And that's why, to this moment, I feel we have minimal monetization, and while we've prevented serious enshittification.
For most of Craig's time in Craigslist, he didn't program or manage people, but did something else.
I became full-time customer service rep, and I did that for a very long time.
That brings us to 2006. Jim found himself at the UBS Global Media Conference. Surrounded by expensive suits of the financial world, he sat on stage in jeans and a blazer, but he might as well have been speaking another language. A financial analyst asked him, how does the site plan to maximize revenue? His answer left the room confused and dumbfounded. That definitely is not part of the equation. It's not part of the goal. Another asked, how did the site arrive at $10 for real estate listings? Jim, completely deadpan, replied, $10 sounded like a nice round number. The crowd laughed, but he wasn't joking. When asked about banner and text ads on Craigslist, Jim explained that, we've had the numbers crunched for us. The numbers are quite staggering. But no users have been requesting that we run text ads, so for us, that's the end of the story. If users start calling out for text ads, we'll listen, he said. The crowd of financial analysts and journalists were stunned. Craigslist was literally leaving billions of dollars on the table. Despite his aversion to enshittification, or rather because of it, Craigslist was still exploding. It was growing 100% year over year in terms of page views and listings. Investors were essentially salivating at the idea of a Craigslist IPO, but it never happened. That didn't stop one company from getting in though. Outside of Craig and Jim was another key player, Philip Knowlton, who owned a sizable portion of the company. The other founders shared a similar stance on equity investment as they did on monetization, but not Philip. Jim and Craig saw the website as a community service, but Philip believed they couldn't grow without investment. Philip was done and wanted to sell his shares, which brings us to the interesting buyer. In 2004, he sold his equity, over a quarter of the company, to eBay for $32 million. This gave them a seat on the board, and an eBay spokesman said that, there are a lot of things about Craigslist that intrigue us. They have built a passionate, community-driven business. Despite the kind words, eBay didn't exactly feel this way. They had darker ambitions to acquire the entire platform and overhaul the company. Craig and Jim weren't about to let this happen, and this is where the story gets interesting. eBay was a shareholder, but also technically a competitor. They had a very clear conflict of interest, and that became apparent in 2005 when they launched Kijiji. This was essentially Craigslist, but from eBay. The name means village in Swahili, and the resemblance to Craigslist community focus was clear. Even more devious was that eBay's name was nowhere to be found, and it was launched under Marketplaats BV, a classified arm of eBay. It wasn't necessarily secret, but it was clear what eBay was trying to do. In late 2005, Kijiji was launched in Canada, then across Europe, Asia, Latin America, and eventually the US in 2007. The US was Craigslist's biggest market by far, and now a new competitor had arrived from their own shareholder. Not only that, eBay was likely using insider information from Craigslist by being on the board to use for their new competitor. They had to do something. Craig and Jim attempted to dilute eBay shares to remove them from the board, which caused eBay to sue. Craigslist then launched a counter lawsuit. And in the midst of the lawsuit, the real truth came to light. Remember that spokesman quote from earlier? Well, as you might have guessed, it was complete nonsense. Email evidence in the trial shows quite the opposite. eBay executives focused from the start on helping their new partner make money from its business with an eye on eventually acquiring Craigslist. They mocked Newmark and Buckmaster for their amateurish board meetings and lack of sophistication. Newmark and Buckmaster meanwhile insisted on allowing users to shape the business and unknowingly frustrated eBay's attempts to gain control of what was seen as a rocket ship of potential. eBay pressured Craig and Jim with all kinds of ideas: more listing fees, percentage cuts on sales, premium placements, and ad overlays. It was a roadmap aimed squarely at turning Craigslist into something else entirely: Enshittification. In the height of the lawsuit, Craigslist released a statement that every measure we have taken has been for the sake of protecting the long-term well-being of the Craigslist community. We have an uncomfortably conflicted shareholder in our midst, one that is obsessed with dominating online classifieds for the purpose of maximizing its own profits. In the end, eBay could keep their pre-diluted shares but lost their seat on the board. And eventually, following their failed attempts at Enshittification, eBay sold their stake in Craigslist in 2015. The feud was officially over and Craigslist had survived, which brings us to the company today. Real quick, we've racked up 160 million views on this channel, but we still haven't reached 1 million subscribers. That's almost as bad as Craigslist's monetization effort. My dream is to reach 1 million subscribers by the end of this year, and if you watching right now subscribe, we can actually make that dream a reality. Let's jump back to some stats as they are pretty impressive. Craigslist gets an incredible 140 million visits a month, and users on average spend more than 7 minutes there. Pretty good, but that's not the surprising part. That is pages per visit. The higher the number, the better, as it's the user spending more time and potentially spending more money. YouTube has a rating of 8.5, Amazon has 6.6, and Temu only has 2.6. Craigslist destroys all of them, with 25.8 pages viewed per visit. This makes Craigslist one of the stickiest platforms in the world. It's still number one in horizontal classified sites, aka broad websites that offer everything: jobs, events, rentals, secondhand goods, and so on. But then there's their revenue. In 2018, Craigslist's revenue was over $1 billion. But by 2024, that had dropped 70% to $302 million. Even with this fall, they are still incredibly profitable, yet the trend is hard to ignore. This isn't because of malicious activity or Enshittification, but the opposite. The reality is that Craigslist's best days are behind it. It's a very old website and it hasn't changed much in close to 3 decades. For many, including myself, in theory, that's a good thing. No Enshittification, consistency, and it's weirdly nostalgic. But in the new world, it's not as appealing, especially with new peer-to-peer websites. It's wildly profitable because of its unique business model: tiny staff, no spending on marketing or advertising, no sales team. But traffic and revenue have been declining steadily for the past 6 years and will probably keep going downhill. At one point, Craigslist was a household name, but now, between the growth of Facebook Marketplace and other classified apps, it's really a has-been. This is a bit sad, but I don't think it's a bad thing.
People want something which is fast and simple and obvious. And that's the site design, which I started in 96. And what we have now is basically a straightforward evolution of what I started in 96.
Craig retired from Craigslist a few years ago, and he's doing what you'd expect with his wealth, philanthropy. But he's very intentional with it. Veterans charities, the families of veterans, nonprofit journalism, schools, bird rescue, and a few others. Things that are specific to Craig and what he cares about. Even if Craigslist never reaches its former glory, I think that's okay. It was a huge positive in the world and it did a lot of good. You don't need to tarnish that legacy to chase profits. I love Craigslist. It's a relic of the early internet and almost a monument to someone committing to their values above profit. It also started the best way possible, solving a need, growing where the demand is, and fixing the problems. Sometimes not following the money is the best way. Someone who's the embodiment of the exact opposite is Amazon, who has been filled with low-quality garbage from Temu. Check out this video to see how that's been playing out. But until then, I'm Hari, and I'll see you guys on the next one.